So here today we're with Coach Anthony Eggleton of Advanced Sports Training Institute in Oakland, California. We want to welcome everybody back to to-the-tide-through-the-win.com. Today is a little different than what we've been doing. We've had interviews with head coaches. Coach here is also a head coach of his program. But we'll get in a little bit, we'll get into some of the training techniques and some of his beliefs and where he got his techniques from, and kind of also how he wants to improve and where he wants to go. Thanks, Coach, for having me today. And I look forward to doing pretty much everything else with you and more training. So tell me a little bit about yourself, where you're originally from, and kind of how you got started in the business, and kind of some of the sports you did in high school and college.
Oh, where I'm from is from Oakland. I went to Fremont High School, graduated in 1978. So I'm a local guy trying to do good and help others.
Okay. And when you were in, what are some of the sports you played in high school?
I played just about every sport, was good at most of them. Wasn't the greatest athlete, but I worked really hard to become good. Never wanted to be a pro, so I did it because in my neighborhood everyone played sports, and if you didn't play sports at a high level, you didn't really fit in.
Yeah.
And worst of all, you didn't get to play because they wouldn't pick you.
Okay.
And I've had a lot of friends that had success, and again, my goal was my grandfather when I was a kid had his own business, and we used to talk a lot. So my goal from a kid was to have my own business.
What kind of business did he have?
My grandfather had a construction business, and I used to work with him, and we talked a lot about being self-sustaining.
Yeah.
And he always preached to me about working for yourself. You know, maybe it wouldn't happen initially, but to set yourself up for that. So as a little kid, my dream and ideas was, how would I be able to create my own business? How would I find my own niche and gift?
Okay. And so when you were in high school, was training something that you liked to do, or was it something that you did in order to be good, or was it something that you really didn't know much about?
I was lucky. I had an uncle, he passed away recently. He was probably a world-class sprinter. He ran at McClimates, and he was one of the first people who exposed me to weight training.
Okay.
And I looked up to him, and he told me a lot of things about training.
Yeah.
And I began to do it and just sort of fell in love with it because it was physical. And you had to know about the body. I got this strange story. When I was a little kid, I was able to, I read the medical journal, and I was able to diagnose illnesses. I knew the bones, the muscles, all this since I was 5 years old. This just happened to fall in my lap, I guess you could say.
Okay. And what was your uncle's name?
My uncle's name was Arthur Harris. He ran at McClimates High School.
Okay.
And he was one of the first guys I think really was into weight training. I don't know why. He just got into it, and I watched him, and he says, "Hey, I want to train you." So I fell in love with training.
And what did you learn from him helping you, and also him showing you how to get really good at weight training?
The one thing I learned from him was the persistence that was involved. That you had to do it consistently, and it can change your performance. I started doing that, and next thing I know, I noticed difference in my quickness, my ability to jump higher increase, and endurance.
Okay. Yeah. And what were some of the exercises you guys were doing back then?
It was all basic exercises, squats, and bench press, basically. It wasn't a whole cadre of exercises like I've been able to do. It was just the basics.
Okay.
But, I was a beginner, so it was probably the best place for me to start as a beginner.
Okay. And so after you figured out this could help, what was the next step in your life when you said, "Oh man, this is really helping me. This is really..."
Well, before I ever got into this, after school I went in the military and I did physical training. I was a drill sergeant, and you had to learn about the physical body, so that's part of my makeup of this also.
Okay. And you went into the military, drill sergeant. What did you learn from that? What did you?
I learned from the military personally that I was unlimited as far as I would allow myself to be.
So no matter what somebody told
you can't do this. You could do it because I was able to do it. Whenever we went on marches, I did anything. My goal was always to be first or second and everything, and I did that.
Okay.
I never let fatigue or anything stop me. So we talk about that here. I think everything is a perception.
Yeah.
That you can go beyond these perceptions. Okay. You must if you choose to be a champion.
And that's within anything you do.
That's within anything. It's not going to be easy sometimes, but you work through it, and you have the ability to change it.
Yeah. And how much training were you doing in the military?
Military training is intense. It's like 24 hours sometimes. So it's physical, mental, all these things. But what it did for me, again, is cut these chains that I thought would bind you. It freed me.
Yeah. And so when you got out the military, what did you do next?
I went to electronics school. I was an engineer. I went over to Silicon Valley, got a job, started out as an inspector, and worked myself up. I trained myself. I read all the books on quality engineering, and I worked myself into a quality engineer. So part of my background also is processes and probably fragmenting everything, looking at it in the smallest parts, and then putting these parts together. That helped me to see things differently being an engineer.
And explain that to me as far as body-wise.
Well, this body to me is like it's a machine.
Yeah.
Basically, that's it. It's a machine, probably the best machine ever designed because it was designed by a higher power than ourselves. So what I'm doing is like adjusting this machine when it comes in here, trying to make this machine run more efficiently.
Yeah. Okay.
And all of its parts.
Now, how big do the feet play in that machine?
Well, you can't ambulate or walk without your feet, so I think it plays a big part. In fact, a lot of the injuries are to the lower extremities, so I'm a big believer in conditioning this for the work to come.
Gotcha.
To prevent, a lot of these overuse syndromes.
Gotcha. So when after you did the engineer thing, then you decided, I want to get into training. What was the first thought, or what was the first thing you decided to go figure out how to do?
You really want to hear this, huh?
Yeah.
All right, so I was engineering. I didn't want to work with processes anymore. I wanted to work with people. So I told my wife I'm going to figure out what I'm going to do with my life. So I'm a big believer in energy and spirituality. So I fasted for about 4 days, and I intensely prayed. So I got a phone book, and I told my wife, whatever my finger lands on, I'm going to go to school to do that. So I closed my eyes, opened the book, my finger landed on physical therapy. And I decided right then and there, this is what I'm going to do. So I had to sit down, develop the plan of how I was going to do that. What would I need to become an engineer? A physical therapist. What school would I need to do? And I decided, I came up with the plan, and I did that.
And what was in that plan? I mean, tell me some of the things that you said, this is what I'm going to do. Well,
I went out and got every book I could find on physical therapy. I looked up the curriculum at the junior college, and I went out and bought all these books myself before I went to school, so when I got there, I would understand it. I read all these books.
Which one did you learn the most from?
I don't think there's any one that I learned the most from, because when I got into it, the way this thing is set up, there's an Eastern way of training, or a medical and rehab, and there's a Western, so I studied both. And I think because I studied both, it's given me a different outlook, a more holistic outlook.
And did you bridge both of those together?
I have, and it's part of the program here also. And that's where I talk about harmonious, building balance.
And
it's more like the Tao, the way.
And just give me a little piece of the Eastern way and I guess the Western way.
Well, to me, the Eastern way to me is when you come in here, I actually begin to look at you and try to become in tune with you. I look at your body and see how you're moving. Then I have you do some motions, and then I watch more and try to get in tune. And I watch for flow or resistance.
And the Western way?
The Western way is everything is preconceived instead of letting the body tell you. I let the body tell you what you need. And then I look at the body like in the Western way to me. They come in here and they tell you, okay, we're going to train this muscle in one way. Fragmented. When the human body doesn't move in that way, it moves with all of these things.
It's like the skeleton they show you when you're in high school.
Right.
You can just move the arms, you can move the legs,
right.
You can move it everywhere.
And the American way is to break everything down instead of looking at it as a whole.
Gotcha. So how long were you a physical therapist?
I was at clinics. I worked at 3 different clinics about 24 years.
And as a physical therapist, I think there's people assume, people come to see you when they're not feeling good.
Right.
Is that always the
Well, in most
that what it
cases,
is?
I don't think it's the right thing to do. I think most injuries and most ailments are prevented by training, living, eating the right way, and all these sort of things. I think they come like it's like they should come to you way before they fall apart. That's the way we do things, you know, prevent it.
And I guess that's more of the Western way too.
Yeah.
You don't go to the doctor
Right.
until you don't feel good.
Right.
So as a physical therapist, what did you learn? What were some of the most important things you learned as far as dealing with people and how fragile the mental state was when those people were injured?
That my own mindset affected them. So if I came in there, they had a back injury for 20 years, I bought into you've had this back pain for 20 years. I couldn't help you to change that. I had to see you as healed.
Yeah. And when you say see him as healed, you mean pretty much, I see that your back's not going to
Right,
hurt.
that's no longer a problem anymore.
And some people and you've seen people that physically
I had people that couldn't walk, taught them how to walk again. I work with joint transplantations, all of these things. I had people with chronic pain for 30 years, able to get them to break out of that chronic pain pattern.
Yeah.
This is just a pattern.
And how does one develop that pattern over such a long time? Is it just the mental? They just lack the mental fortitude to go forward, or is it a combination of the body's really hurting and the brain is really hurting?
It's brain, mind, all of these things. Like they say, make brain, mind, body now. We're all connected, so it's all of those things. Like I notice patterns like in breath. Usually people that are when you're in pain, you do shallow breathing. So I look at that stuff. Someone comes in here, they're breathing really shallow, something's not right. So I begin to ask questions.
And shallow breathing, kind of like the short breaths?
Short breaths. So they usually breathe shortly. So there's something going on there. That's just a signal.
Almost like
And most people under pain are shallow breathers. They don't use their diaphragm.
Yeah. So like wheezing.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're just shallow. They don't take in enough oxygen, and that's a sign to me something's not right. You're out of balance something.
Yeah.
So one of the first things I do is teach breathing exercises when you come in here to expand the lungs and take in oxygen.
Yeah.
So that alone helps to break these patterns that your brain is in.
Yeah, got you. And when you said, okay, I'm a physical therapist, I'm helping these individuals fix their mind and fix whatever chronic illness they have, was there a sense of relief you had from yourself knowing that any of those things could happen to you, or was it more or less you just feeling like I'm giving my community service to society?
I was doing, what God put me here to do first of all, or this higher power.
Yeah.
And giving from my heart.
Yeah.
And see, I don't see necessarily you separately from me. I see it as one. So I was not only helping them, I was helping me also.
Yeah. And when you say that, you see yourself as them. I mean, I think sometimes just individually with us human beings, sometimes we go home and we try to leave that problem right there at the job, or we try to leave whatever other issues somebody else is having. We try to leave those issues with them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's to hear you say that is a really good thing, especially as a physical therapist, because you've seen so many people, and you become attached to people, I'm sure, and you want to see them get better.
Right. That's my goal, to help everyone get better. If they didn't get better, I was wondering, I'm not doing something right, so I got to keep digging until I find out exactly what needs to be changed.
Gotcha. So, after you're moving forward, you're doing a physical therapy career, what leaded you into athletics and bodybuilding?
Well, I was doing the bodybuilding before that. I was actually training myself and training some friends and different clients.
Yeah.
But what led me more into athletics is, I guess, there's a couple of different things happening.
Yeah.
Well, one, I was rehabbing athletes in there at the clinic, and they had to get back on the field or court. Yeah. So I was training them to, first of all, get healthy again, and then their performance started to go up also.
Yeah.
And then another thing happened. I had a patient come in, and he had been in a car accident, and I heard him talk, and he was a football coach.
Yeah.
He was at Contra Costa College. His name was Coach Greer. He gave me my first opportunity to train football players.
Gotcha.
So he heard me talking about stretching and all that stuff. So he invited me down to build a stretching program there.
What year was this?
1990 or something like that. And that's when I started training football players as an organization. That was my first strength job as a strength coach for football team.
Yeah. And so you got that job.
Mm-hmm.
Let's back a little bit. Tell me a little bit about you told me about the Western and the Eastern, some of those philosophies. Now tell me a little bit about the philosophies that you had taken and made them work at CCC. Going back to the Russians or going back to the...
Well, CCC didn't really have a workout plan.
Yeah.
They worked out. That was the first thing to create a plan, a structure.
Yeah.
That was the main thing, just create structure. Build a program that would peak them for the season and build an integrated program that means developing speed, power, all of these things, and endurance.
Yep. And that was back in 1990, 1992.
At the same time I had that also. Sometimes, I've done so much, sometimes I forget.
Yeah.
I also had the job at Kennedy High School. I was a strength coach. Manson gave me a job there. And I developed that strengthening program. And then I think I was working in Berkeley. I had lots of schools at that time.
Yeah, understand. Now, tell me some of the philosophies that you believe in as far as the mind and the body.
Mind first and foremost.
Okay. And you say mind first. We get that. How do you change somebody's mind?
First of all, change their breath pattern, breathing pattern. You can change their whole soul and everything through breath.
Yeah.
So first of all, what we do is change your breathing patterns when you come in here.
Yeah. Gotcha. And when you change that breathing pattern, what follows after that?
What follows after that, the person is in a state where they can retain movements, they can remember things better, all of that. So I'm putting you in the right optimum state to learn.
Okay.
And these things could be applied also in the classroom, not just with weights.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get the kids to use these things, these tools in their toolbox throughout their lives.
Got you. And you take the mind, you take the body.
Mm-hmm.
Now tell me a little bit about your program. Tell me what differs from your program and somebody else's program.
Well, my program is modeled on the Soviet or Eastern Bloc system, and the reason I say that, it starts out with the youth component, then it goes in intermediate training, and all the way up to advanced and pro level.
Okay.
So it's graduated like a martial art.
Okay. So
And I decide where you go when you come in.
Gotcha. So and it's geared more or less academies.
Yes.
To a certain extent. Okay. And you get a beginner, you got intermediate, you got excel, you got pro athletes. Have you had one from the beginning and seen it go all the way?
Well, I see this all the time.
Okay.
Yes, I have plenty of athletes.
Yeah.
Most of these athletes you see on the wall started in the 6th or 7th grade, all the way up to the pro level. Damian Lillard, I just trained, and Jared Cunningham.
Yes. Okay.
And then this guy here, the Stanford football player, had since his 7th grade, and his brothers at Stanford.
Okay. And I'm sure that goes back to that helping others and helping,
Right. And also, this is a planned training, and it starts out training at a young age, and then progressively it's more intense.
Got you. Now, let's talk about today's athlete. Some of the changes you've seen in today's athlete than from the athlete maybe in the early 90s or the late 80s. I mean, I understand athletes have gotten bigger and faster and stronger, but what are some of the subtle changes and what are some of the huge changes that you've seen in the athlete?
Well, for one, the biggest thing is these kids' mindsets. They believe they can do these phenomenal things now. Well, we didn't think it was possible. For some reason, they think it's possible, then they do the impossible.
Yeah, gotcha.
I don't know if that's because of society or is it the coaching and all of these things.
Gotcha. Now, would you say that the athlete today is bigger and stronger because the training has gotten better, or would you say the athlete is bigger and stronger just because we've evolved as a people?
I think we're evolving genetically. We're evolving, and the other thing is nutrition has improved. Also, that's a big thing. We're getting bigger.
Yeah. And nutrition simply means the stuff that we're taking in.
Yeah, we're taking in. Yeah,
Okay.
the way we're eating in probably a scientific manner. Some of us now, you know.
Yeah.
And that's really important. Like to be a champion, you got to eat like a champion, train like one, and rest like one.
Yeah.
And I think they're doing all of these things. Some better than others.
Yeah. And I guess the rest one, it seems like, just my opinion, the rest one is one of the ones that I still see us improving.
Right.
You know, a lot of kids don't understand that body needs rest too. You know, I mean, some guys only need 6 hours, some guys need 8 hours.
Right.
And I guess you got to figure that out on your own. Is there something that they can do to figure that out?
I teach my kids to listen to your body, first of all.
Yeah.
Don't necessarily listen to the coach, listen to your body.
Yeah.
And I try to give them cues that they can read.
And those cues?
Those cues are like, are your legs heavy? Are you tripping over things? That means the nervous system, the CNS, is fatigued.
Yeah.
What I do when they come in here is look in the eyes. So the eyes are the center to the soul. If your eyes are sort of dull, then your CNS is usually fatigued, so I back off.
Yeah.
And I know if they're really dull, then you're probably coming down with something. You've taken on too much stress. The body can take so much stress, and then it starts to break down.
Yeah.
So me, in our training, we want to work right at that stress, but not go over the edge.
Got you. So when you say you want to work right at that stress, is that stress to make them, so when they get on the court or on the football field, to make them feel like they've already been in this situation before?
Yeah. My idea with training, mentally, physically, is like chaos.
Yeah.
So everything in here is chaotic. The whole way we train so that you get used to handling yourself in chaos.
Yeah.
It's nothing new to you.
Yeah, got you. Now, I see you've got a lot of athletes on the walls. What have you learned from those athletes?
What have I learned from the athletes?
From the athletes that you've worked with, what have you learned from them? Because I know you've given
Well,
them
I
so much.
learned the main thing I learned from them, because I've trained them and I've observed them. In order to accomplish a goal, you must be willing to give up something.
And
That's what I've learned from these kids. They were willing to give up something to reach a goal.
And you've trained basketball, you've trained football, you've trained baseball. How are they interconnected?
Movement is movement, right? I just see sport as poetry in motion and movement. So there's not a lot of differences.
Now there are some.
I might train you differently, but in my mind, the background is all just movement. And I want you to move more efficiently in different